You find yourself struggling with everyday tasks like climbing stairs or carrying groceries? Maybe functional fitness can help. Stick around. Let's chat about it. Hey, I'm Mike.
And I am Twain.
Welcome to our podcast. This podcast goes beyond the fads and delves into the science behind sustainable weight loss and fitness for the 40 plus crowd, where we bring you expert insights on exercise, nutrition, and health habits, empowering you to make informed choices and create a personalized plan for success.
Success, 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 success. Trying to create a little echo effect.
That's what we call
So,
the budget, right? We,
yes,
we, we don't have
it
the
is
stream deck,
budget.
so we need to make our own.
Yeah, it costs money. Hey, to all of you listening, it costs money, I think, to buy editing software. So, if you all know of any free editing software, probably let us know. Actually, let Mike know. He does the editing.
Well, I think editing is a stretch. Should I say does the editing is a stretch?
Oh man. Wait, we have the music playing before this as well, right?
Yes, we have our intro from our region.
Yes, it's very Asian inspired music. I'm not sure some might say borders on cliche, but hey, it's anything for a good laugh, right? Sometimes.
We see, maybe season 3 will come from a different region. Find
Maybe.
some other different traditional music or something.
Okay.
But looking
Uh,
at today, we're going to talk about a thing called functional fitness.
yes.
Are
Functional
you ready
fitness.
for it?
Let's go. Let's go. This is a
All right.
great topic to talk about.
I think the very first thing that we probably need to address would be because this has been used in marketing in every which way it could probably be used. But
Yeah.
at its core, what is functional fitness?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like what is functional fitness? You see it all the time on different gyms, especially a lot of those gyms with lots of classes. And it's usually something like, oh, this is a functional fitness class. It's like functional, I don't know, hypertrophy or whatever. People will talk about all these things and use the word functional fitness interchangeably with a lot of other ways of describing fitness. But what exactly is functional fitness? And I think a lot of times we end up thinking that it's something to do with, making exercises a lot more dynamic or active or mimicking, I don't know, sporting movements, things like this. And I can see why, because a lot of people are misled to think that's functional fitness by a lot of gurus, right? I'm sure if you scroll through Instagram, you see a lot of weird exercises being done, and people tell you, oh, this is like, do this for like to build up your functional core strength or something where you hold kettlebells and you walk or something of that nature.
And usually followed by sign up for my $300 course where I teach you
Yeah.
everything about functional
No,
fitness.
or buy my functional fitness guidebook or something like this.
Yeah.
So as much as we are ragging on that, I think it's not so much that we are trying to rag on that, but we're trying to bring attention to the idea that, hey, functional fitness is honestly context dependent. There is no one definitive thing that is actually functional fitness, because functional, by the virtue of the word, means that it is specific to the thing you're trying to achieve. So if somebody says, I'm doing like this workout for functional hypertrophy, or what exactly would that mean, right? It would just mean that I'm maximizing, I mean, it's actually doing a bodybuilding workout. I'm doing all the exercise to maximize my hypertrophy, which is like muscle building. So the function here is to build as much muscle as possible. So all the exercises, all the way we program everything would be towards that end goal. And I guess in that context, then, for most people who are trying to be like generally healthy, they want to feel better, they want to have more energy, things like this. Functional fitness will be any kind of program that will allow them to train all the components of fitness that will allow them to function on a day-to-day basis with no problems. Okay, so my definition of that would then be, hey, every day you need to be able to move yourself around, and you then would need a baseline level of strength to be able to do that effortlessly. You would need to probably, run up and down, climb up the stairs, run after your kid, carry your kid, things like this.
Yeah.
You need a certain level of cardio conditioning to be able to do that without kind of guessing out. Like
Yeah.
if you're climbing up the stairs and you are out of breath by the end of it, then I think you need to strengthen up. Like functionally, you're not functioning very well on a day-to-day basis. Um, so I would say that that's where I would start from. Functional fitness is any kind of training that allows you to get your day-to-day routines going, such that you don't actually have to expend too much effort to do it. And then anything else beyond that starts to go towards your actual goals. Even if the goals is like just enjoying training. Because for some people, it just might be, I like to do all this stuff, right? I like to do all this random stuff, do all these kind of workouts, and that's what I enjoy. So as long as, it helps you maintain that current level, it makes your daily life feel easier by contrast,
Hmm.
then I think you've ticked that box already. What do you think, Mike?
I think you nailed a lot of things on the head there. But I think if I had to speak from a personal experience, is
Hmm.
that when I was younger, I would do more things like actual strength training or
Mm-hmm.
or or even some elements of bodybuilding that I would do.
Yep.
Now, as I've gotten older, I've focused more towards this so-called functional fitness. And it's exactly as you were pointing out. It's going and just exercising the elements that I use on a daily life. So simple things like being able to squat, you know,
Yeah.
go from a seated position into a standing position without much difficulty. And as a father, sometimes you get the extra weight because maybe the kid fell asleep on you. And as they've gotten bigger and older, the weight has increased as well. So
Yeah.
actually being able to have the strength, and not just the strength, but the mobility and the balance to be
Yes.
able to go from the seated position into a standing position, be able to carry the kid to the bed, then do a bend, what a good morning, and you bend
And then
over
put
to
them
put the
put
kid
them
down.
down to the bed gently. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of these come into play. And so I looked at it from that perspective. So while as I don't really work out anymore to grow massive big arms and everything,
Hmm.
like Arnold, as we like to always reference,
Yeah.
um, I do still want that strength that, if I need to do something with my kids, I'm able to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that's super important, right? Like being able to be in the shape that's necessary to be able to take care of the people that matter the most to you.
Yeah.
I think I mean, both of us are beer guys, right? So obviously we speak from that perspective of like providers or protectors kind of deal, and I'm not sure like is that too sensitive to talk about nowadays, with all the woke culture and things like this. But at the end of the day, like masculine traits are masculine, right? And just the general role of protector and provider kind of deal,
Yeah.
where you need to be at a certain level of function, you know. Um, and if you have somebody that you have to take care of as much, like for you, you have a extended family in that sense, right? You have kids, you have your wife, if it ever came down to it, you want to make sure you can protect them, you can carry them to safety, you can grab them all and like, be able to physically be able to help them. I think that's super, super, super important,
Yeah.
to keep the level of function, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Not forgetting the romance aspect, when you have to carry the groceries back from the store, you don't want the wife to carry any, so just give me all. And you need those farmer walks to help
All those farmer walks, man. All those
paying
farmer
off
walks.
dividends.
Yeah. I mean, lifting your kid up, that's easily an overhead press. So you can see a lot of these like basic things, like you mentioned, squatting down, pick up your kid, or your kid falls asleep on you, and then having to do like a bend over, like a good morning or a hip hinge, almost like a deadlift style thing where you are lowering them into the bed, to make sure they don't wake up, right? Because
That's
that's the
right.
thing. You
That's
don't
right.
want to wake them up when they're sleeping already. All these things are like literally the basic human movements that we should maintain and continue to be able to do easily, even as we age.
That's right.
Even
So
as we age.
so there's
Yeah.
the option, right? I could easily ask my kid to always lie on me, and I can go and I can do squats, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, go and put them into the bed. And then
Yeah.
they'll be like, "Oh, Dad, it's enough now." And I'm like, "No, I still got 3 sets to go." There's this option.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, there's maybe these exercises you can go to the actual gym and actually use equipment that can
Yeah.
mimic this
Yeah.
kind of thing
And
in
you can overload it
additional
so much
exercise.
more. Yeah, you
Right.
can overload it so much more, make it so much easier, and you can achieve the same thing in like one third the time, right? Or even
Exactly.
lesser than that.
And,
Yeah.
and I don't need any fancy or out of, how should we say, crazy new age exercise,
Yeah.
because the traditional exercises actually fulfill all, probably let's call it 98%. Maybe there's some I'm not thinking about here. About 98% of functional fitness can actually be achieved through the traditional exercises. Like compound exercises. That alone covers such an array of functional fitness.
Yeah, and for anyone that's listening, you look like if you want to get started in that sense with fitness, it really is a case of the wheel doesn't need to be completely reinvented. You just need to know which wheels that you need to use, for your vehicle, so to speak, right? Like what type of tires should you be using on your vehicle? So the different type of exercise that you choose, the way you would regress them or progress them, all these things you could easily get like a personal trainer that could actually walk you through it. If you Google it, I'm pretty sure it's not too difficult to find, kind of a good starting point as well. But going back to the idea here of like functionality, we talked about strength, okay, which is the baseline. Like out of all the fitness traits, strength is the baseline fitness trait that kind of forms that foundation for everything else. So let's say all the other traits, flexibility, mobility, all these other things, being equal between two people, the person that's stronger will be usually able to do a lot more than the other person. All right. So strength is definitely one of those things you do not want to neglect in your day-to-day, in your own training, because your day-to-day life and quality of life requires that as a foundationary a point. But there's also the other elements of flexibility. There's other elements of like mobility. Okay. So what are the differences between these two? Because these tend to be the buzzwords. I'm sure you see a lot of people selling things where they say like, okay, improve your mobility with this or improve your flexibility with this, right? And some of them are really legit. Like you can do a proper stretching program to improve your flexibility. You could do like a lot of mobility drills to improve your mobility. But I think a lot of people are really confused as to what exactly is flexibility and mobility. So the simplest way to explain it, I would say, is flexibility is just how flexible you are in a static position. So example, for most people, it's like reach down and touch the floor, right? Try to reach down, touch the floor. How flexible are you? So that's kind of like flexibility. What's the extent to which your muscles can stretch? Okay. There is some limits to that. There's quite a defined limit to that for the most part. Can you improve on it? Definitely you can. But yeah, flexibility, there's a genetic element. Some people are hyper flexible, which is not really a good thing. And just some people are like, not as flexible because of multiple reasons. Like I have a friend, he broke his elbow in a motorbike accident. So he can't straighten it out anymore. So he's no longer like completely flexible. His flexibility is limited in that arm. But then what's mobility then? How does the two kind of intersect? Mobility is simply the ability to remain flexible through movement. So it's like mobile flexibility, you think about it. And how do you actually train that? Just make sure that when you're doing your exercises, you're bringing the muscles through a range of motion, right? A full range of motion. And they have to be like, have some resistance to them. So as long as you're exercising properly in the gym with good form, full range of motion, for the most part, your mobility is probably going to be okay. It's kind of taken care of in that sense. Where people tend to go wrong is like, when we go into the gym, we try to lift a lot more heavier weights. We go to a bit more towards ego lifting, and then we shorten the range of motion. We try to change the technique a little bit to move more weight. Okay, then you're no longer training within the same range of motion, so it changes things already. Yeah. So in terms of functionally, when you're training, most of the things that you want to achieve, like the general majority of benefits you get, will likely come from already doing any of the basic gym movements that we talked about earlier. Your squatting down, deadlifting, your rows, overhead pressing, any kind of like bench pressing even, will already kind of take all these things into account. Yeah.
I think what you're referring to there, I'm guilty as charged, because that's what I used to do. Load the weights as high as I can and do half reps and then count them as full. But when I tell my buddies, it was complete reps every time when I did
it. We all make that mistake, man. We all have
the most evident of that one, where I've seen the progress of it, is where I changed my mindset. And I think for those that don't know, Twain is actually a personal trainer that actually trains people online. And that's where we started out, as I engaged Twain Services for this. And he walked me through how to squat properly. Because previously,
Yeah.
for those also that don't know, yes, I live in Southeast Asia, but I'm actually a white guy from Africa. And when it comes to squatting for us, squatting is either sitting down on a bench, or when we squat down, our heels lift up and we actually squat on our toes, which is not really something you can hold for long term.
Mm.
And so what we did is we actually lowered the weights completely, and we went through a fuller range of motion. And from doing that, now this is probably not the best thing that everybody wants to hear, but the functional fitness that came out of that is that in Southeast Asia, there's oftentimes this thing called a squatting toilet.
Oh
When
man.
I first got here and I opened up the door, I looked at this hole in the ground and I thought, who would steal a toilet? And so I couldn't use it. But now, thanks to this functional fitness that went through the using squats, I'm able now to do it properly. Well, I suppose I'm able to do it properly and do it properly. I'm able to
Yeah.
squat properly,
Yeah.
and that helps me. I don't have to stress out now whether or not they actually have a real toilet or a squat toilet. And that's really something that was a big shift for me, because prior to that is I would, as I said, I'd rack the weights and I would go halfway down, and as soon as my heel starts to lift, I would already start going up. So instead of thinking, hey, maybe I should address that heel lifting and increase my mobility rather than just trying to increase the weight each time, that was something that never occurred to me when I was younger. But as you get older, you start to think about these kind of things. And you
Yeah.
start to look at, okay, what's the mobility and what's the exercises now that could best work for this? So things like, squats, when you're picking things up. As I said, when I'm picking my kids up, the same thing. Lunges, when you're climbing stairs, that can, after, like, we live in a condo, 23rd floor. When you're climbing those on the stairs, you reach like the 14th, 15th floor, you can already start feeling things burn. You can do rows for grocery lifting. That also brings into the farmer walks for carrying them. Overhead presses, as you said earlier, lifting your kids up. Also lifting when you're going on holiday, lifting the bag and putting it in the overhead
Oh yeah.
on the airplane. It's quite an ego boost when you see somebody struggling. Let me handle that for you. The worst thing that can happen is
Especially if it's
you can't get it up, and then the air hostess comes. Let me help you, sir. Oh
yeah,
man.
that would be terrible, man.
And then the other thing that's also that affects us is as we age is our posture and back support, right? So we need to also develop our core for that. But leaning onto that, the one thing I also wanted to ask you with regards to this, you obviously have all the experience with all the clients and all that too. Maybe not so much with your practical living since you're still approaching 40. But when you say the important element is strength, right?
Yes.
After the age of 40, we start to experience this wonderful condition called sarcopenia. Perhaps you can elaborate a bit on what that is and
Yeah.
like how that would also affect your strength going forward with exercising and without exercising. What would be the difference?
Well, I mean, simply put, for those of you who are not familiar, sarcopenia is just essentially muscle loss, right? Lean tissue loss as we get older. If we don't do anything about it, if we don't do anything to preserve our muscle mass, once you hit 40 plus, the rate at which you lose muscle each year actually kind of increases quite drastically. And so what's the issue of losing muscle, you might ask? I think a lot of people don't realize that the reason why we can move around and do things and feel relatively, like doing all these things is effortless is because we have a certain baseline level of strength, which is also because we have a certain baseline level of muscle. So once that starts to drop down, things start to feel harder. Daily life starts to feel a lot more challenging. And you might be scratching your head wondering why. It's like, oh, it's just due to old age. Like literally old age is that, is your body breaking down, if you think about it. And so we need to do everything we can to not only maintain our body, but to create such a huge buffer against this breakdown that we are able to still function very, very well into our old age. And so the good news is that it's never too late. Like the best time to start, yes, was 10 years ago, I suppose, but the next best time to start is now. Or maybe if you want to be pedantic about it, the next best time to start was 9 years and 12 months, 11 months ago or something. But but the next best time really is now that you can really control it. And so getting started with it is going to be super important. Any kind of basic resistance training is going to help preserve your muscle. Preservation of muscle actually is much easier than people think. And that's why I say resistance training. I didn't say weight training, because resistance training, it just means that your muscles experience a higher level of resistance and stress against them. We use weights because it's the most efficient and easy to do, but even simple things like body weight exercises are great, especially if you're just starting out and your current conditioning levels are such that even body weight exercises are challenging. That's probably a really good place to start. That if you're getting up from the chair, holding on to both knees and like slowly, shifting your weight forward and getting up, that's probably something to kind of address.
Have you
Yeah.
been watching me, is it?
Well, you just altered yourself, Mike. Uh, but the thing is really, I mean, jokes aside, it is a really real issue. My parents, my mom, she had actually pretty extensive sarcopenic issues as she was getting older. She's like 70, I think she's 70 now, 70 plus. Um, and in the mid 60s, she was actually experiencing some of these things, which means like consistent pain, consistently feeling weak all the time. She tried to squat down to wash the toilet or something, and then she would like not be able to get up without grabbing onto the sink and slowly easing her way up, things like this. And and so I literally got her to just start clocking more steps, like start walking around a bit more. And I told her, okay, every time you walk 1,000 steps, you just, you go to your chair, you sit down in the chair and stand up 10 times. And then just repeat that. And so she built her way up, she started around, I think like 5,000 steps, so doing about 50 reps. And then she built her way up to um doing 10,000 a day, and then doing 100 reps in total, just doing the squats, and that has been her go-to, easy. And already that has improved her condition so much that right now she's so much healthier, she's so much more mobile, more energetic. Even something as simple as that, and at that age as well, you can actually really take control of it really quickly. So the thing is, don't wait until like your body has degraded down by so much, you know. Like inflation has taken its toll, right? Like don't let the aging inflation take its toll. You want to build up as much of a buffer against it so that you're consistently guarded against that.
That would probably lead in also into the other one is like, what are benefits beyond the daily life? We have that, like you gave a great example there by your mum. Do you have
Yeah.
other examples, like with some of the clients maybe that you've used, trained?
Yeah, for sure. I think we've talked a lot about the physical part of things,
Yeah.
right? But the reality is that a lot of us, we want to do certain things, or we want to achieve certain goals. Like I want to get a six pack, or I want to be able to lift a certain amount of weight, or I want to just get more energy in my day-to-day life. Like all these goals are because we want to experience a specific outcome with those goals. Meaning I want to get a six pack because of what I believe that getting a six pack will, make my life, how it will make my life better, right? And so I think a large part of fitness itself, if we talk about functionality, is that functional fitness should also make you feel much better overall. Okay, and it actually seems quite funny, because if you realize a lot of times the people that get so obsessed with quote unquote functional fitness in the niche space are those that like worry about, oh, am I aligning my form exactly correct? It's like, what, this crossling, oblique crossling over, and you got to train this thing. Oh, this thing is really the root cause of my back pain. Oh, I need to train like my, I don't know, the front of my shin, the tibialis anterior, to improve, like get rid of knee pain or something. Like all these little things that people get sucked into that microcosm of like what is not exactly the most important. Um, and they think about functionality. It's like now mentally you're so overwhelmed and so stressed out by all these things that don't actually matter. You're putting so much attention into all these things that don't actually matter, and you're missing the forest for the trees, right? So many ways to describe this, like stepping over 10 cent coins to pick up you're stepping over $50 bills to pick up 10-cent coins kind of
Yep.
deal. So with regards to functional fitness, I think one big criteria everybody misses out is that it needs to make you kind of feel good. There needs to be some really positive feel good impacts from it. And sometimes it goes beyond just the physical. It really goes into the mental space, confidence. I think that's a big one here. The cool thing about any kind of like proper training, especially hard training, okay, is that number one, it's going to be super functional because you're challenging yourself. Your body will adapt. Okay. But more than anything, it's something that you choose. So chosen struggle is always going to be a very valuable. Why? Because it teaches you that I choose this thing, I put myself through it, and I overcome it. And then it reinforces to you or empowers you in terms of like, I can do things. And that part, that it really helps your mental psyche a lot, because people that don't do that and people that kind of like have to go through like life struggles, I guess, not chosen struggles, like a lot of life struggles, end up oftentimes feeling the impacts of those life struggles because they haven't really built themselves up to be able to deal with that. Because life is all about struggle anyway. I mean, it sounds nihilistic, right? But life is really all about struggle. What's that Buddhist saying? Life is suffering, right? Life is suffering, but whether you choose to suffer or not is a different story. And I think this really leads into that part about like the confidence of things and why it really helps to go and do some sort of training that's hard and challenging, and putting yourself willingly through that to kind of get out of or get that positive like confidence benefits. I think the best example of this I can think of is this one guy I used to train. So he's really obese, right? He was like 130-ish kilos. And a lot of times, like if you think about it from a prescriptive point of view, for somebody at that weight, ideally what they should do is just, clock a lot of steps and watch their diet, really, really restrict the diet as low as you can go in terms of the calories that's manageable, and just walk a shit ton of steps, 20,000 steps a day. And honestly, the fat will just fall off. Okay. On paper, it sounds great. And it makes sense physiologically. But the issue is that we are dealing with a human being. And if you ask somebody to do that, I'm pretty sure this guy would not have done that, because it would be so sucking and so numbing to him to do 20,000 steps a day and then starve himself, even though that would be the easiest way to kind of get rid of all his excess fat first before he even ventures into other domains of fitness. And so what we did for him was I brought him to the gym, and I asked him, like, during that very first session, it's like, okay, so right now, you need to lose weight, all right? But there's so many ways to do it. Tell me what excites you. Like, what do you think inspires you, or what do you feel is something that you want to try out? Okay, because I just want to get an understanding of how does he feel, what to him is exciting exercise, and then I can figure out how to modify the training according to that, right? And he was like, oh, I see you all lift, squat all these big weights, or like I see you bench press these weights. Oh man, it looks so cool. I want to do that. And so, I look at him, I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do that. Let's lift some heavy weights. Let's try to get you to do something that you've never done before. Okay. And then because for him, his mobility at that time being so massive wasn't the best. So the easiest thing to get him to do was to do some sort of a deadlift. Now I use a trap bar deadlift for him just because, again, easiest thing to pick up without having to worry too much about form. Like you cannot screw up the form for a trap bar deadlift too badly, to be honest. So and the benefit of that is also you can actually lift a little bit more weight with the trap bar deadlift than you could with a regular deadlift. And so for him, he's 130 kilos that day itself with some coaching through the form and just some boosting of his confidence, right? What we did is we actually got him to lift. I told him, like, let's lift as heavy as you can for 3 reps. Okay, let's try to go for a heavy 3 rep. And this dude did 120 kilos on that first day that he came and lifted up. And can you imagine what that did to him, in terms of his mental psyche?
Yeah.
Suddenly, this guy, who his entire life has felt so neglected, who his entire life has felt so, like shunned and shunned away by society, and he's always not so confident of himself. Suddenly he's like, I can do this, like I can lift this amount of weight. I didn't think I could, but now I can. And he then connects this to exercising, to enjoying the process. And when you get this enjoyment, you get satisfaction, you get like addicted to that, right? It makes it so much easier for him to turn up for the next session, and then the next session, and the session after that. And then slowly I can teach him more things. Then he starts, the best part is he starts to have all these like confidence of like, oh wow, I'm actually much stronger than I think. Hey, what else can I do? What should I do? And now I introduce to him the idea of like, hey, why don't we try to clock 10,000 steps a day? So, oh yeah, I can do that. On my lunch break, I can do that definitely. Say, oh, how about food? What should I eat to support this? I want to be able to lift more weights and all that. Oh, this is what you should eat. It's so easy to get him on the bandwagon in that sense, on the train to do what he needs to do, right? And so the benefits of like fitness, honestly, like functional fitness, I really feel it has to extend your confidence. It has to be something that you feel so motivated to want to go and do it again and again and again. So for some of you, it might not necessarily be lifting weights, right? Like lifting weights might be boring. I think we can all accept that. For some people, it's just not their thing. Okay. So my suggestion is find your gateway sporting fitness drug. Find that thing that you enjoy doing so much that going to the gym as a way to get better at the thing makes it, makes it very possible for you to do. So some people that I know, some clients that I talked to before, it's like they like to play tennis. They like to play tennis. So I'm saying, okay, cool. Let me try to adjust your program such that it makes you better at tennis. So we're doing all these things relating to improving your tennis game. And so, finding that like functional fitness it goes back to our definition of it right at the start, right? Which is how is it going to better your day-to-day routine and make you able to do what you need to do on a day-to-day basis? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have in today's fitness culture is that if I want to go and work out, like especially like in our situation, right, where we've been out of fitness for 10, 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
and you're coming back into the thing, like we always say, what's the very first thing you go and do? Oftentimes, you won't go and consult a trainer. Instead, what you do is you hit our big friend Google for the latest and greatest workouts. And
Yeah.
so then it's like, okay, so I'm a guy now. What do I want to do? I want to build muscle. Okay, so I go and look, oh, where's The Rock? What is he doing lately? And then it's his workout of like 3 hours long because obviously he has time for it and he has a specific goal in mind for that workout. But then it's
And
posted
look at
here.
he's
But
paid
now,
to it.
sorry,
He's paid to do it.
and he's paid to do it.
Yeah.
And so now in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I want to build muscles like The Rock, so I need to go and do this. But at the end of the day, I don't really need that because when I really think it through, I don't really want muscles like The Rock. But I do
Yeah.
want, like you're saying, I want that confidence that I'm able to, if I want to pick up my wife and go be romantic, carrying her over whatever threshold, I can. And it's not like, I have to put her down now. Oh, my back. Well, these kind of things.
Yeah.
And all these, it takes into account. And so the functional fitness aspect comes from that perspective, is that, okay, you're able to do the exercise and then get the confidence from the outcome of the exercise. I mean, you don't get the confidence, not all of us get the confidence from the exercise because
Yeah.
usually we feel half dead during it, but the
Oh, for
outcome of
sure.
it, we get the confidence from that. And that's really a motivation and it drives towards the why, like why are you actually doing this? And when you understand the why of it, I find that also helps to motivate a lot more. And that might be something that plays towards your clients as well. It's like once he
Yeah.
saw that he could lift this, then he's like, okay, I can see now my why is like, wow, this really makes me feel good. I really like being able to lift this kind of heavy weights for his particular situation. And then he wants to structure everything in order to be able to lift heavier. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up lifting super heavy weights when he's starting out at 120 deadlift.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, for context, I remember when we stopped training together, when I stopped training him, he was already at 200 plus kilos in terms of like, I think he was doing 220 to almost 240. Um, on the trap bar. We had this like really long one that we could load up a lot of weights on. Yeah, so he was already doing like that kind of weight, yeah, and the best part is he lost 30 kilos. He was down to like 100 kilos by the time I finished
Wow.
working.
Fantastic.
And
Fantastic.
and a lot of it was also like he lost a lot of fat and gained a lot of muscle, at the same time, which was really good, to see, because his overall weight loss was 30 kilos, which is already a lot. But at 100 kilos, he was like so much more shapely, his waist was so much slimmer, all the good stuff, really, all the good stuff. Like I really think he was starting him off on the right foot. As you do with everybody, you try to start everybody off, make it a pleasant experience, and
Yeah.
then allow them to kind of write that journey on their own with your guidance.
Yeah. And I'm sure his quality of life improved a heck of a lot ever
Oh, for
since dropping
sure.
those 30 kilograms.
I think one of the things that you mentioned about confidence is just even being able to like be approachable with people.
Yeah, that's
Especially
very true.
if you're coming from the background that he's coming from, where it's like, oh, I don't even have the confidence to talk to people. Obviously, it's not that because he got slimmer and all, that's why he suddenly could talk to people. It's one of those things where, the confidence kind of comes from within, right? But
Yeah.
you can use the fitness to bring it out a lot more. And then changing the body and changing the shape, changing the outer structure helps to reinforce and amplify that up further.
Yeah. So what if, like you gave a very good example there about how you walked him through it. But what if now, if I come to you and I say, okay, Twain, I've been out of the gym now for 15 years, and I really want to get into this functional fitness thing. Like, what should I do to get started?
Well, I think the golden rule is always this, right? Start and meet yourself where you're at. Or rather, the golden rule for us as a trainer and a coach is we meet the person where they're at, and then we go from there, you know? So if you're doing this on your own, or if you're trying to do a self-assessment for yourself, just kind of ask yourself, like, okay, if you've not been training for 15 years, you haven't done any proper exercise for 15 years, then you really need to start slow, okay? And then gradually increase the intensity. Where should you start with? Again, body weight exercises are the best thing. Usually in the first week, I would recommend, hey, like try to get some sort of increased movement in, because most people are just not moving enough, okay? And I would usually say get some steps in, so that's like, as many steps as you can manage. If you check your own current status of how many steps you're taking in a day, you can see like roughly how much room do you have to kind of increase it to, right? I reckon most people are not getting 10,000 steps a day. Okay, because that takes time, that takes some energy, and most people are sitting. Mike's raising his hand for all those who, because you can't see this, obviously a podcast medium. Yeah, but 10K steps is not something that the average office worker or person who works at a computer can do without being intentional about it. All right. If you are in some sort of service work that you're on your feet all the time and stuff, that's great. You probably get enough activity. You then can start with, I imagine you can start with basic body weight exercises and things like this already. Yeah. So start slow, meet yourself where you're at, and then gradually increase the intensity. The other thing that we want to kind of focus on would be the form, right? So we talked about it, proper form over like just purely increasing weights. Now, there's a little caveat here I want to suggest is that um, a lot of times people get too obsessed with trying to correct the form that they don't actually load up anything substantial or heavy. And the truth is that sometimes if you don't even have like a decent modicum of weight on you, your muscles actually don't have enough feedback to kind of push against. And so the form actually looks very different. Like if you were to do a body weight thing versus if you were to do like, or let's say if you do something with very, very light weights versus if you actually do it with a decently effortful, challenging weight. So if somebody were to do like 1 kilo dumbbells in their hands and do like an overhead press, okay, unless you had some sort of prior injury that renders your shoulders completely useless, I reckon most of you can grab 1 kilo and put it over your head. But yet I see some people sometimes they go into the gym, they do like 1 kilo as a weight, right? And they actually do like maybe 10 reps with that. They put it down and they do three sets. Better than nothing. You're kind of getting started, sure. But no one really would say that that's super challenging. You know,
Yeah.
like for any lady, even it wouldn't be very challenging because most ladies can carry their kid above their head, right?
Yeah.
And easily a kid is going to be 5, 6, 10 kilos. So yeah, so sometimes like making sure you're not like over. The little caveat is you're not over focusing on form at the expense of any reasonable kind of challenge. Yeah, so it's okay to have a bit of ugly form here and there, but the key thing is you want to write that line of okay, does the weight feel challenging, and can I more or less keep the form? Yeah, so I think that's one thing there. So focus on the form, use enough weight to challenge it, and then
And also the range of motion, right?
yes, but it falls under form.
Yeah.
So when we talk about form, range of motion, it's like making sure you're going full range. An example here actually would be, let's say if you can't do a full squat, that you can't squat all the way past, halfway point, then maybe you might want to work on range of motion first. There might be certain exercise where your form is only like halfway down, right? And you can't do more than that. So maybe the first thing you need to do is focus on like improving that range of motion. So in that case, yeah, maybe not using a heavier weight might be a reasonable option in that sense. But that brings me to the next point, which is if you're just starting out, especially after having not done it for a long time, you definitely want to consult a professional. I think the easiest way to get back on track is honestly with guidance. Okay?
Yeah.
Because you can search for a free program and I can literally tell you what to do right now. Like clock your 10,000 steps, make sure you get enough protein in for the day, you can use calculator, calculate that. And then in terms of training, you can find like a very simple body weight exercise program to do. Sure. That's a very good starting point for anybody that's kind of coming back into it. But the truth is that everybody that's coming back into it has their own physical baggage that they need to kind of deal with, right? You might have certain structural different deficiencies compared to somebody else. You might have certain, setbacks or niggling aches, pains, whatever that needs to be kind of catered to. When you are coming back into it at an older age, honestly, the simplest way to kind of deal with all this is just get some help to get assessed, to get an understanding of situation, and then what like your plan would look like, and then actually working with a professional on that because that's going to save you a ton of time. And
Yeah.
time is not something that you have when you are older, right? Like as we get older, we don't have the luxury of time to figure things out ourselves. Especially not with something like health and fitness, which does take a little bit of time to gain traction. So the sooner you want rewards and results from your exercise efforts and endeavors, the more you should try to contact somebody that knows what they're doing and can guide you in the correct direction. Yeah. Um, and the last thing I would say is this, like, again, going back to the topic of functional fitness defined is simply, again, making sure you have that routine in place. Making sure you have like a training that allows you to keep up with your routine that you have in place. Okay. It has to be specific enough to your goals. In most cases, people just want to lose some fat, gain some strength. So most general training programs will be able to do that. But if you have more specific things, sports that you want to play or return back to, you probably need a little bit more of a customized approach. Yeah. But functional fitness itself, at its core, especially if you're just starting out, can be done anywhere, can be done anytime with minimal equipment. You really don't have to use much to get started.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's usually the biggest issue for most people is literally getting started. So yeah, so if you're listening to this and you've been sitting on the fence trying to get started, hey, just get out, go for a walk, listen to our other podcasts as you do so. And then yeah, get started from there. Just try to clock like 10K steps a day. Start from there. And then once you get into the rhythm, ask a professional, say, hey, I've been doing this. What else can I do? Any professional worth their salt will give you a free consultation. Like if you do want a free consultation, just kind of go to the website, book it in, with us, and we'll give you a free consultation to kind of meet you where you're at and take you through kind of what you need to do. Yeah. That's it. That's all I have, to be honest.
Yeah.
Anything you want to?
I think it's quite comprehensive already, actually, from my side.
Yeah, I feel like I might have missed a thing or two. Just trying to think in my head. Just so you all know, when we are talking about all these things, right? We are really not like we don't prepare that much. I get it's probably obvious. But we don't really prepare our points as much. We kind of have some general ideas of what we want to talk about, but we really just speak from experience and The idea here is just to be as authentic as possible, I guess. So we don't like to over prepare a script or anything.
We shouldn't give away all our secrets, huh? We even have intro music now and everything. We're trying to be professional.
I mean, trying to be professional, but I think there's still value in authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
As you say, what we're trying to do is this is really as guys coming together. We're really having a chat, and we're hoping that some nuggets are falling out. And if any of them speak to you, do share them with your friends. Give us our podcast on Spotify a follow. And we can always, if you have something that you're struggling with, you can always drop us a note on either on the Spotify or via our website, 40plusfit.com. If there's any particular subject matter you would like us to discuss, we're quite open at the moment. We're very open to any kind of content that you would like us to chat about.
For sure. I mean, leave those comments down because we do have our topic list that we have planned out. As you can see, all these episodes are planned and we're recording them, we're putting them out weekly. But sometimes it'd be good to hear kind of like what people want to hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think that's it. That probably
That
wraps
is
up
it.
our functional fitness podcast.
That is it. That is it. I think we've covered all that we can cover.
Yeah,
Anything else that we need to cover, we'll do a part 2
for
if it's
sure.
required.
For sure.
All right. Thanks, Twin.
That's it. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Yes, in the next episode. Have a good one.